In this presentation, we will use tax software to consider the tax impact and effects of a health savings account, and HSA will be using Lacert tax software owned by Intuit, the owner of QuickBooks. The data input and processing of the forms will look similar with other types of tax software as well. With regards to our income tax equation, we're thinking here about generally the deductions. So the deductions which are going to be the above the line or Schedule 1 deductions as opposed to the standard or itemized deductions. Here we are on our 1040 with our mock client, James Smith, single individual. Now typically if we have the HSA and it was provided by the employer, note that that should be reflected on the W-2. It should generally be reflected on the W-2. Box 12 usually indicated by a DD form. So a DD indication. So that should be fairly straightforward to enter into the process because it'll be in the documentation and handled for us for the most part by the employer as they fill out the documentation in the W-2. What if we're self-employed and we have an HSA? That's going to be the situation we'll have here. We're going to say this is a self-employed individual. They have Schedule C income, and we're going to consider the inputting of HSA. So we're going to be in the adjustments to income line. We already have something there because they're self-employed, and therefore we have some items there related to the self-employed income and the taxes on it. We're then going to go to the Schedule 1. Scrolling down to Part 2 of the Schedule 1, we see we already have a component here on line 14. This is the deductible part of the self-employment. We'll talk about that in future presentations when we consider more into the Schedule C. What we're considering now is line 12, the health savings account, and we would need to attach Form 8889. I'm going to go ahead and see if we can jump to that. I'm going to right-click within the Lacert software and say I'd like to jump to the data input screen necessary. It takes us here to the HSA contributions that you made. So remember, when we're thinking about the HSA, we have the amount that we're going to put into it and then the amount that we're taking out of it. We're considering here on the input side, the benefit we want from the input side. We're hoping, like an IRA, that when we put the money in, we can get this deduction in a similar fashion as we would with an IRA. And then when we take the money out, the hope is that we don't have to include it in income as long as we made the payments in the proper format to medical, for medical purposes. And that's going to be generally what we're looking for. So I'm going to put 600 here, and we're going to go back to our forms, and we see the 600 pull over into line 12. So if we add that up, we're now at 7,665. If we then go to page 1 of the 1040, page 1 of the 1040 on line 8A, we see that 7,665. So we have the 100,000 income minus that 7,665 gives us the 92,335. Then we have the difference between the standard deduction and the itemized deduction. We're taking the standard deduction 12,200, and then we haven't seen this yet, the qualified business income deduction. We'll talk more about that later. It once again has to do with the Schedule C. So a Schedule C business income will complicate the picture a lot. We'll talk more about that later. And that adds up to the 28,227, these two numbers. So the 92,335 minus the 28,227 gives us that 64,108.